Welcome to the Raising Values podcast, where the traditional family talks. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You can support the Raising Values podcast through Patreon. Phil and Gillian are behind the mic, and we hope you enjoy the show. Good morning.
Welcome back to Raising Values. I'm Phil.
I'm Gillian.
And off camera, we have a very irritable cat this morning who apparently is angry about being locked out of our daughter's bedroom.
Yeah, we've closed the door. The thespian is sleeping. She's had a wild weekend of plays and performances that she's done from her drama club. And they did a wonderful job. Phil and I are trying to guzzle enough coffee to give you a good show today.
That's a double latte.
But we're both so tired, and hopefully we don't wake her up. We've told her that she can sleep in as late as she needs to today. Later, we'll go get ice cream. We'll celebrate the end of the season and everything else. But until then, Mom and Daddy need coffee.
Yes.
So hopefully we're coherent for you this morning.
Coherent-ish.
I don't know if we're going to make any sense. Maybe the theme of this show today, this episode, is a good one because maybe we're the red flags.
I'm not sure. But yeah, the topic for today is red flags, which you like tried to sneak us down that road twice last episode in a row. And that's why I was like, that's next week.
I know.
And actually, it wasn't scheduled for next week. I have a running list of things, and every now and then I just sit around brainstorm topic ideas, because that's one of the things you have to do as a content creator, is constantly be thinking about, what do I talk about next time to keep the show fresh. And red flags was actually way down the list, and I elevated it towards the top of the list because I was like, okay, we've talked about it sideways twice. It probably needs to be the next.
Yeah, I can't even remember what I was saying on last week's episode. I'll have to go back and listen to what I was saying, that you were like, hang on, wait a second, don't start talking about that yet. But yeah, red flags. I think that's enough of a topic. We don't even have banners for this one because we're going to just talk about our experiences with people in our lives, and even in our daughter's life that we have found that red flags have popped up. And try not to
out anybody.
We're not going to out anybody. We're not going to name names. Hopefully we're going to be as discreet as possible so that if they're watching or whatever, we don't want to make anybody feel bad. But
no, but at the same time, I also take the point of view of, like, if you were not aware that these behaviors were inappropriate or destructive or troubling to people around you, then maybe this is your gentle, polite, anonymous wake-up call that these are the reasons why people shy away from you and bounce in and out of your life, because these things to some people are warning signs.
Well, as soon as you said that, I'm thinking of particular people in my head, and I'm thinking, I don't even know if they can introspectively look at themselves and see that there's a problem. You know what I'm saying? So if someone has left their life for whatever reason, it's obviously that person's fault, not theirs. And they don't see that as a red flag. Maybe they see that person as a red flag. I don't know. And that's not to say that we're not red flags to people.
I'm a walking, talking red flag to some people.
You're red flagged, highlighted, underlined, bold print on every watch list in this country. But to people in our lives personally, hopefully you're not too much of a red flag to people. I think you are genuine, and what you see is what you get with you. And so I don't think people question at all. And it's like your best friend, who's now our brother-in-law, which is such an amazing story.
That's if ever I can convince those two to come on this show, that would be a fun discussion.
Well, his voice was in the camping trip.
Yep.
He didn't want to be on air, but his voice was in the camping trip. I'm trying to get this cat away from this door. She is going to wake up this child. Anyway, when I first met your group of I met your group of friends before I met you. You were still in Iraq. I was in college. And your best friend was it was almost like he took on this charge of, Phil has told me that he's interested in this girl. Okay, they're not dating yet, but it was almost like he had this.
He took
He
responsibility
took
for you.
responsibility. He, checked on me. He made sure. There was one weekend where I wasn't in Slidell to hang out with the friend group, and he called me up and he's like, "Where are you? Why aren't you here?" And I was like, "I don't have gas because, I'm in college, and being a student worker didn't pay a whole lot of money then." And he drove to Slidell to pick me up and brought me over there, and then came back, brought me home, all that stuff. I spent the night at a friend's house. But anyway, where am I? Oh, I remember on one of those trips to Slidell to hang out with your friend group, he was telling me about you. I had questions. You and I were talking back and forth daily while you were in Iraq, trying to get to know one another. It was like an eHarmony before it was eHarmony. So we were online dating before online dating was cool. We set that.
But I think, but just to interject, I think the one departure from like what you're discussing though is that like there were people that knew you, that knew me, that were able to kind of like read the tea leaves and say, I think these two personalities will fit well together. So it was this weird mismatch of like modern day online dating, because we were separated on different continents, and yet at the same time almost being like set up by friends who were playing matchmaker, because like they saw the two of us and they're like, these two could work out.
Yeah, it started with one of your friends. And no, I'm getting to the point. It started with one of your friends playing matchmaker, and then it was almost like this huddle of people were like, oh yeah, let's get into this, and let's get these two together. But there was one instance when he was driving me to Slidell, and he goes, "You know what? You're either going to love Phil, or you're going to hate Phil." And I was like, "Oh my God." And so all these different things about you were piling up, and I'm just having to go through them. Somebody mentioned your eyelashes, and I hope you like men with long eyelashes. And he does. He has eyelashes that women pay a lot of money for. But
all genetic, and they were a real pain in the butt when I was in martial arts, by the way.
But he said that you're either going to love him or you're going to hate him. And I said the same thing to Piper a couple of weeks ago. She's 10 and 5th grade. And so there's a lot of drama with the girls in her class. They hate each other in the morning, but they eat lunch together, and they're best friends by the end of the day again. And so there's just a lot that goes on with them. And I'm, like we always say, we're raising an adult. So we're not raising a kid, we're raising an adult. And that's something that she just needs to understand as she grows older, is that hold on to your personality, because, and don't change it just because someone doesn't agree with you that day. But she's going to be one of those people where they either love her or they hate her. And hate's a strong word, but I don't think she cares.
No. Well, Piper has been raised up to this point to make her own decisions, to not follow the crowd, to not bend to peer pressure, to be very honest and forthright and forthcoming.
Mm-hmm.
And the old saying that when you piss people off, it's because you stand for something.
Yeah.
In other words, it's this idea that like if you adhere to your principles, if you voice your opinions, you're inevitably going to upset somebody because they're not going to agree with you. And the only way to make everybody like you is to be water, to go around them and never stand your ground. And that's not a personality. That's not a set of personality traits I can abide by teaching my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to serve her well. But like you said, she has to accept that the backside to that personality is you're going to upset some people occasionally, even friends. I mean, look at the two of us. I love you more than life itself. We drive each other up the damn wall sometimes.
This morning, especially, I think the lack of coffee.
Yeah, the lack of coffee doesn't help. But I guess my point is that having a strong personality inevitably invites conflict.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know, since you brought up my best friend, now my brother-in-law, I remember you told me like there was a time when he literally asked you, he's like, "So Phil, you're sure about this?" And like not like trying to talk you out of it, but it was almost like you do know what you're getting into with this
A
guy,
lot of
right?
people were like that. A lot of people were like, Phil, are you sure? And I was like, I guess so. I mean, I was 20 years old and it was just kind of like, yeah, why not?
But you remember how you said that like even to some people like I am a walking talking red flag. Like when at that age, and some parts of my personality have mellowed a bit, but I wouldn't say it really changed.
They have mellowed.
Yeah, but
You have mellowed out.
at that point in my life, like I was very quick to just slice a person off and cut them out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very, very quick to hold a person at arm's length if they gave me a reason not to trust them. Specific to like the way I dealt with girlfriends, like most of my relationships with women lasted on average about 2 weeks, which now that sounds really bad on the face of it, but the problem was it took me about 2 weeks to filter through their BS and realize that they were manipulative, they were lying, there was something here that led me to believe they weren't playing straight with me. Mm-hmm. And the minute I encountered that, unlike most of my peers who were bedazzled by a cute behind and a pair of jeans, I would just immediately eject them. Like I've literally stopped dates in the middle of dates, driven women home, kicked them out of my car, and said, "Bye, don't lose my number."
Not literally kicked them out.
No, not literally, but like I've literally brought them home and said, "Get out." Because I just once I reach that point where you're not being honest with me, I have no use for you in my life. I can't trust you, and if I can't trust you, there's nothing to build a relationship on. And I wasn't dating to pass time. I wasn't dating because I was bored. Like I had that personality back then that I was perfectly comfortable to be by myself.
Yeah,
I'd cuddle up with a good book in my room and just ignore the world and be happy as a hog in slop. Or I'd go to a party and hang out with a bunch of my friends. I was fine either way. So if I dated, it was because I was looking for someone to spend my time with and share my time with. And if they didn't measure up, that was it. There's no point in continuing this. It's a waste of my time and a waste of yours. You go find what you need.
See, I was not like that. I ignored red flags. I don't know. Yeah, very much so covered my eyes, ears.
You were all three monkeys.
Yeah, I ignored a lot of red flags, but ignoring them put me through different scenarios, and I went through a lot of different things, especially in relationships with boys or men, whichever age you're looking at, that eventually led me to finding someone like you and looking for someone like you. So it did take me covering my eyes and shielding them from the red flags that I was seeing in those relationships to finally be like, this is not what I want in a relationship. So to say I'm thankful for that, that's a stretch, but I guess I am. I mean, I do thank God for the trials and tribulations that I have been through in my life. I think that those things make me who I am. They make a person who they are. But God, the heartache, if I had just opened my eyes and been like, this isn't good. Like, your boyfriend shouldn't be cheating on you, but it's okay. He loves you.
But at the same time, like the thing I'm very quick to point out to people that you just kind of gone in an arc around is like every bad experience makes you who you are today. And to take away one of those bad experiences very well might be the one bad experience that keeps your line and my line from intersecting.
Right.
So that's why I always take the point of view of like, if every painful moment of my life brought me to where I am today, give it to me twice. Because where I am today with my wife, with my daughter, with the life we have together, I'm happy. Like if this is the reward for all the pain, even trade. But I also point out to people very often, I'm like, bless you.
Sorry, guys.
I use the analogy of Japanese sword making.
Okay.
So the way you make a sword in very, very old traditional, the Japanese way, you take a piece of steel, it's heated up, you beat it with a hammer, you fold it over itself. From the steel's perspective, it's a very violent process. There's a lot of force applied, a lot of hammering, a lot of heat. And to the steel, that's a very violent process. But the end result is this like a world-class, world-beating type of sword making that is respected worldwide. And yes, there's violence at the beginning, but at the end, in the finishing and the polishing and the sharpening, in the making of the hilt, there is this very gentle artisanry given to that sword by the sword maker. And I look at people the same way. Like, there's pain in the beginning of our lives, but towards the end, once we've gotten most of the hard work done, we polish off the rough edges and things are a little gentler, hopefully. But you don't get to the finished product without the heat and the getting hit with the hammer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the theme in most of our episodes, is the maturity that comes along with growing up and aging and all that stuff. And I mean, that's another one of your really good philosophical moments of swords. And what was it last week? It was
cloth making, or how to rip a piece of cloth.
Ripping cloth was another one of your philosophical moments. But I do see it. I have seen personal instances though where the beating and the hardship and the turmoil at the beginning just devours that person, and they don't make it to the bright side of life. And their path in life is just, it's never been easy, and it never did get easy for them. And that can be attributed to personal life choices. I do believe that people are given choices daily, and choices suck. Sometimes I just wish somebody would just make up their mind and be like, all right, Gillian, this is the way you're going to go. And no.
Not me.
Not you.
Because I was about to say, I try to do that. You tell me to shut up and leave you alone.
I meant like a higher power, and I guess in a way he is. You're not a higher power.
Oh.
Anyway, so
I thought I had her for a second.
No, not you. Never mind. Anyway, so I do see people that unfortunately are taken over by the turmoil of the beginnings of their life and the situations that they're placed in. And maybe it's drugs, maybe it's addiction, maybe it's
bad
something, just bad decisions that they continue to make. And
not just that, but it's been my observation throughout life that people that make bad decisions in one arena tend to make bad decisions in most arenas. Like if they make bad decisions regarding spending money, they usually make bad decisions regarding potential spouses. They make bad decisions with how they spend their time. They just make bad decisions. And because of the way my brain works, I try to rationalize that. And I usually do that by boiling down to the base problem. And I think the base problem is, in psychology, what's referred to as deferred gratification. It's the age-old question of, I want fun right now, or do I not have fun right now, knowing I could have more fun later?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the whole discussion about you and I going to college and eating, discount pork chops every day and busting our butts to not take on student loans and intentionally waiting to start a family until we were financially and hopefully mature enough to do it. There's all these moments in time where we said, I want fun right now, but I'm not going to have fun right now because fun right now will cost me more fun later. So we deferred gratification.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, if you apply that one little fine principle to a lot of situations in your head that I'm sure you're thinking of right now, you can see how the decision was made. I want fun right now. And they had fun right now. But then that meant when the time came to have fun later, they'd already had the fun.
And I would switch that word out, fun, with escape, because my brain keeps going to something so personal. And it's not with me, but with my sister, who was an addict and is a recovering addict. That escape was the choice, and she needed that escape. And her her personal life was not always easy. I'm trying to think of his name. Jeremy, is it Jeremy? The really smart guy who has like all these philosophical, it may not be Jeremy, but anyway, he made a statement one time that said a sibling's life is going to be different than your other sibling's life because you're two different people. And so you may have grown up in the same household, but you had two different experiences. And for a long time, I couldn't understand like why my sister chose to go down the path that she did when we grew up in the same household. We were given the same opportunities. We went to private schools. We did all these amazing things. We had these opportunities afforded to us that were just most people don't get, but she still went down the path of addiction. And she was looking for that escape. But the thing with her and a lot of people they see those red flags along the way. They still want the escape, but they know that this is not healthy. This is not good. These are red flags. We have to avoid these things. And for her and for her fiance, they stopped. They made one change. They made one choice in their life to stop and get help. And for her, it was kind of forced because I had her arrested, but that
it was out of love.
But you know what? That was a choice for me as well. There were red flags that I saw with my sister, and I don't think that she's going to be opposed to me talking about this. I think her story is one of bravery and something that people need to hear. We watched my sister dwindle away to nothing. The addiction had just taken hold. It had destroyed the family, and she now is in a better place and knows that. But I made the choice to say, you can't live like this anymore. You are literally going to die if you do not get help. And so I made the phone call to a friend who was a deputy, or he was the sheriff at the time, I think, in the town that she lived in, which is where we grew up. And I told him what was going on. He went out there as a friend / deputy sheriff and arrested her and said, it's time, Phoebe. Like, it's time for you to stop. And that was the grain of sand that started the ball rolling on a number of choices that she had to make to pull herself out of addiction. And of course, she's a recovering addict. And I know what she says, and what recovering addicts say is that the addiction is always there. The choice is always there to go back. I mean, you see it all the time. People stop the drug use or whatever they're addicted to. And so many times when she's called me up and said, yeah, he relapsed, but he died on this last relapse because he overdosed. He did too much or whatever. So red flags for people don't always stop them. But in this case, and in a lot of people's cases, those red flags are so big and you can't close your eyes to them anymore. And I'm really, really thankful for the two of them that saw the red flags and that this was not the way to go. And, they've been clean. I want to say my sister's been clean for 8 years. It's probably not that's probably not right. But,
and what Joe just said, I think kind of ties up what you're saying nicely, is that with your sister and her fiance finding each other, it's now turned into steel sharpens steel. Like they work to keep each other on the path.
Yeah.
And they emotionally support each other when they're at their lows. They enjoy each other's successes. They have, through this horrible life experience that they both had of addiction and how it crippled them, they each found someone who could help them be the best version of themselves, which is the way I really call it. Because I mean, they are both, and I hadn't known I call him my brother-in-law, as far as I'm concerned, he is. But I didn't know him before he met my sister-in-law, but I see the impact I see where they were when I first met him. I see where they are now. They've become better versions of themselves.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just everyday life. They they're holding down jobs for years. They own their own home together. They own their own cars,
They plan for the future,
yeah.
which is something that didn't happen before.
Children that had gone away in their life, like Phoebe's child, she now lives over there. Of course, she's already given her almost three grandbabies, 6 if you include stepsisters and brothers. But I just think that even though your life begins down this tumultuous path, is the daily choices that you're given. You have to be strong enough to make those choices, and change is hard, and there's nothing easy about taking that hard path. What is the phrase? The road to heaven is, or the road to hell is
paved in good intentions.
Yeah. And so it's,
and I would say, if there's an inverse to that, it's that the road to heaven is paved with hardships.
Yeah, there's a meme that goes around every now and then. I'll see it, and it's a stick figure on this side, and it says, "My life's goal is over here." And my thought is that I'm just going to make a straight line over here to my goal. And then God's thought is, no, we're going to do this, and you're going to have to crawl out of this canyon, and then you're going to climb up this mountain, and then you're going to cross this river, but you don't have a raft, but you're going to have to get over there. And you make it if you just believe and have faith in God that you're going to make it to your end goal. And so, and I believe that He positions us in those times, in those tumultuous times, not to I'm using a bunch of phrases. There's a phrase that God doesn't give you what you can't handle. God only gives you what you can handle, and I don't believe that. I believe God gives you things that you can't handle, so that you will turn to Him and use Him as your help. You need help from God. And so sure, you're going to be going through situations where, of course, you can handle it. It might be hard, and it's going to be difficult, and it may not be comfortable or whatever, but then you're going to go through things. And I have been through things. My foot was ripped off in a car accident, almost ripped off in a car accident. And now that's been a 20-year recovery so far. And I say 20 years because it happened 20 years ago. I'm still learning how to use my foot again and my ankle. And as I age, it gets worse and worse. But I don't believe I went through that with God saying, oh yeah, at 18, you're going to be strong enough to get through this. Absolutely not. I have to turn to God almost daily when I get out of that bed going, please just help me to get home today and be able to walk at the end of the day, because it's so painful. But I think he puts us in those positions so that we can turn to Him and say, okay, I am a mere human being. You know me. You made me. I need your help. I just need your help to get through this.
And in your analogy, I think the reason why you can't go from stick figure to goal directly is a lot of the same thing I was talking about earlier with turning a piece of steel into a Japanese sword.
Oh, yeah.
You're not ready to go from here to here. You're not what and who you need to be to get to the goal He has ordained for you. You're not that person yet. You have to go over the mountain, over the river, through the canyon, and everything else. You have to experience all those hardships to become who you need to be to reach your goal. He knows that. It's a little hard for us to see that sometimes.
It's funny. I started talking about God and we lost 2 viewers.
It happens. But red flags to kind of get back into
maybe that's a red flag for some people.
People that ramble. I think and I try as I often do to try to distill things down, get down. I don't like being really down in the weeds and specific when it comes to principles. I like to get things as simplified as possible so they apply broadly. And I know in the past we've talked about how I have personal feelings about how selfishness is a very harmful thing in a relationship. I believe laziness is a form of selfishness. And I feel like selfishness is definitely one of those major red flags that we should all be on the lookout for in any relationship, whether it's friend, spouse, girlfriend, acquaintance, neighbor, anything. Anytime you have a disparity in the willingness to give between you and another party, you have entered into a relationship that is by its definition going to become transactional. They're going to always try to take more than they give, because that there's no thought process of, well, I just give because they need it and I'm trying to help them out. And I ask for only what I need, because if I don't need it, I'm not going to take it.
Mm-hmm.
It then becomes, in their mind, everything is about, I have to keep my scale way down heavier than theirs is. So I would say selfishness is a major red flag. And there's a ton of ways to see selfishness that I don't think as young people we're really able to notice. But then as we get older, it starts peeking out. It starts peeking out in like laziness
Mm-hmm.
or selfishness of effort. Like if you ask a person to do something that's a pretty small thing and they pitch a horrible fit about it, it's like, but I'm just asking you to do like one little thing. It's not taking anything from you. Why are you pitching such a fit about it? And it very well could be
gaslighting.
Well, gaslighting is a whole that to me, gaslighting falls under manipulation, which is another red flag. But I would just say selfishness
Mm-hmm.
is an enormous red flag, and you can apply selfishness almost anywhere. Cheating is linked to selfishness.
Yeah,
because I prioritize my wants, my needs, my pleasure more than my commitment to this other person.
Mm-hmm.
So where else does selfishness? What else is selfishness?
In friendships, I can pull for. I mean, yes, in relationships you see that, and when I say relationships, I mean like boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, whatever.
Any relationship.
Well, but in friendship, I had this one friend many years ago that it started with a, hey, can you help me do this?
Oh, I know who you're talking
about. And of course, yeah, I'll help you do that. And then it turned into, okay, but I also need this. Okay, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And it just another snowball effect of, can you do this for my daughter? Can you do this for, I don't want to say it because it's going to totally give this person away, but there was a constant, I don't have the time to do to host this party. I don't have time to do this craft. I don't have time to do whatever. Can you do it for me? And it got to the point where it was overtaking for me. Like it started to get overwhelming. And then finally, again, I lifted the blinders and I was like, hold on, this is totally a red flag. But the real, it wasn't even the selfishness of that this person continued to ask and ask and ask. It was when she asked and then she almost in the same breath, in the same conversation, disrespected you. She had said something disrespectful about you. And I was just like, yeah, we're done. Like, we're done. We can't be friends if you can't just respect the fact of who he is, and she was one of those people that fell into the love or hate. There, I don't think there was any love from this woman, or this girl, but
hang on a second. Let me cry into my coffee a little bit.
Anyway, could be in a butthead. But anyway, that was a relationship that definitely needed to end. And I was happier for it because I didn't feel like I was being used so much. So it's not just in relationships with a spouse or a significant other. It's also in friendships that you have to look for those red flags of selfishness.
And lack of respect, since you brought that up.
Lack of respect.
And respect is so multifaceted because it's not just respecting a person. It can be respecting boundaries. It could be respecting wishes. It could be respecting a person's space, their property. It could be anything. Mm-hmm. Although I would caution a person of two things. If a person, misogynist moment, totally from a man's perspective.
Misogynist.
Yes. If a woman doesn't respect your property, like if you're a teenager, you're dating, you have a car, I'm hoping we're taught properly, and like you work really hard to keep the vehicle maintained and nice, and because it's like at that point, and when we're teenagers, our car is like the most expensive thing we own.
Yes.
Some people don't take care of their vehicles, and I don't know what to do about them. But if she comes in and the feet go up on the dashboard and the trash hits the floor, if there's no respect given for like something that you've obviously invested yourself in, Or even if it's not a piece of property, if it's your time isn't respected. Like, let's say you compete in sports, or you have a hobby, or if there's something you invest your time in and that person does not respect your time investment, they don't respect your priorities.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to ask to infringe upon them a little bit and say, hey, I know you do this thing, but can we like do this other thing? Because I just want to spend time with you. That's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if it becomes I am demeaning the time and the effort you spent on this thing because I just think it's stupid and you should be doing something else with your time, eject that one immediately.
That one.
And if that person disrespects your family, out immediately.
The time investment one can be attributed to employers too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And there's been places that I've worked in the past where my investment in the time I was giving to the company was never enough. It was never enough, and I could always add more because there's more time in the day. Who needs sleep? You can do this.
You were a salaried employee. Like, that's worth pointing out at this juncture.
Well, yes, but two things happened. One, I have a hard time with saying no.
Except to me.
I do, and there was an episode we did, in a couple of weeks ago where no was a complete sentence, and I've had to work on saying no. But I was also being taken advantage of. My time was being taken advantage of, and those red flags have to also be considered. And whether it ends with you having a conversation with your employer saying this isn't right, this is my job description, blah blah blah, or it ends with you leaving the company, that has to be determined at that time. Maybe there's a history of employees leaving because the employer is abusing that not responsibility, that
relationship.
Yeah, relationship. And that's also something to consider too. I mean, I would hope that when you get into a relationship with someone, you ask questions about their previous relationships and, well, why did you break up? And what was that fight about? And things like that, because you want to learn, like, why. It's, do you ask the question when you go into a interview, well, what happened to the previous person in this position? Why did they leave? And they hopefully answer you honestly with as much detail that they can.
They never will.
They won't, but you can gauge that. Hopefully you're smart enough to understand if that person is telling you the truth about the previous employee in that position. But the same, you have to look at relationships the same way too. Like, why did that girlfriend leave? Why did you kick out that girlfriend or whatever? Now, me being me, I have a core group of girlfriends. But for the most part, and I have texted my group of girlfriends going, I hate women. Like this, I cannot deal with women. I don't hate women. Some women, the majority of women, drive me absolutely nuts. And to me, women are just red flags. Is that really bad to say?
I mean, you're asking me.
No, I guess I can't ask you.
Because before I met you, I resigned myself to never, ever get married for the rest of my life and never have children because I was just done.
Okay, so me saying that, I'm not trying to exclude anyone from this podcast or these episodes or anything like that. But when you were talking about ex-girlfriends and your past relationships and things like that, it was just, they kept stacking up into this category of, oh my God, why did you take the time to be with someone like that? Anyway, that was...
Why did I, or you were asking yourself that?
No, I was asking myself about you. Like, why did he spend so much time trying to... it was almost like you weren't seeing the red flags, or maybe like, why did it take you so long to see that red flag? Obviously, I see the red flag in your past relationships, and as you're telling me these stories, does that make sense?
It does. Some of those relationships, I wasn't I don't want to use the word mature. I wasn't sophisticated enough to see the red flags on the face value.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them. I mean, bear in mind,
I can't.
Yeah. Well, and bear in mind, like at this point, like I'm 40 years old and we've been together 18 years. So the last time I was in the dating pool, I was a much younger person with a lot less life experience.
True.
But like some of the relationships that lasted longer, it either took me longer to like peel that onion until I found the problem, or I just wasn't sophisticated enough to see it, even though people around me could plainly see it in some cases.
Same.
And like I said, the reason, because like I know I commented to you because we had these conversations, we were getting to know each other, but I know I commented to you. I'm like, if we make it 6 months, that's like the longest relationship I've ever had, ever. And which I think probably shocked you, but I was like, but if you get past that 6 month long, it was about 2 weeks was the average, because that was how long it took me to find out they were selfish, they were lazy, they were manipulative, there was something there that I was immediately like, hit the ejecto seat. I'm not going any further down this road.
Yeah.
So whether it's better to have like a string of 2-week-long failed relationships where you quickly assess the situation and bounce them out of your life, or fewer longer relationships where it took longer to find out they were a walking, talking red flag, I don't know. I just know that.
I mean, yeah, I can't talk. I mean, my red flag relationships went on for months. So.
Yeah. Okay. So not respecting time, not respecting boundaries was another one you talked about with, I mean, that could be employer, that could be anything though. I mean,
yeah,
see, I know I got pulled into a side conversation quite a while back where there's this discussion about men and women and having expectations for the other and boundaries. And for some reason, it seemed in this conversation like the majority of the opinions in there were women saying women should have boundaries, but men aren't allowed to have expectations, which that pisses me off to no end, because anytime you have if you can switch the genders and totally change the meaning of the phrase, then I kind of reject it out of hand because it's not being evenly applied. But I think boundaries and expectations are perfectly fair in relationships. I think that I think that every woman and every man has a right to say these are the boundaries. And that's not a controlling, manipulating, I'm lording over you thing. That is just saying, in order for me to commit to this relationship, you have to stay inside these boundaries. And if you don't want to, that's fine. We'll part ways. But I can't be in this relationship if you color outside these lines. And those lines, like we talked about last time, those lines shouldn't be such a tightly constricted box as to make it impossible for that person not to color outside the lines. But like having some basic boundaries, like for me, has always been like, don't lie to me, don't
cheat on you.
Don't lie to me, don't cheat on me. Laziness is one of those things that like I try to be understanding of, because I know that like this weekend, for example, we're not going to get a lot done today. We're both.
I hope your expectations with me today are very, very small.
I have reasonable expectations.
I mean, grocery shopping and clothes.
We're doing this podcast. We have to get groceries, and I owe you and your daughter ice cream, and that's like it for today. I'm not pushing for a lot, but if I would say that like it is reasonable for two people in a relationship to expect that the other one not exhibit so much laziness so consistently so as to become a burden to the other. Like I shouldn't, us being married, but in any kind of relationship, like I shouldn't have to every day pull you along because you're laying on my leg and you're now stopping me from accomplishing my goals. Like relationships should be mutually beneficial by their nature. And if they're not, then I have to question why you're in it. Because now it's literally that relationships become a bottomless pit you just pour effort into.
Yeah.
And effort can be time, money, energy, whatever. And I don't have a limitless cup to pour from. So like if I don't get to take some out of the well every now and then to justify what I'm putting into it, why am I here? But I think boundaries and expectations are perfectly reasonable. I think you have to have those. I think that's twofold though. If a person's boundaries are so restrictive that they've stacked these boundaries up in such a way that you can't breathe, then that becomes a form of manipulation.
Yeah.
And I think if the expectations on the other side are so restrictive, you can't exist, it's become a form of manipulation. And manipulation is another incredible red flag, and it's probably the most pervasive one. It's the hardest for us to see in the beginning of a relationship, and especially when we're younger and we don't have as much life experience and the ability to kind of like step back from a situation and analyze it. And I believe manipulation is probably the most common one.
Yeah. I as you're talking, I'm thinking about past relationships and even all of past relationships, and I have a few current that I refuse to totally cut out of my life because I'm just not that person, that type of person where I can just cut some of these people out, mainly because they're family. But manipulation is the hardest to process, and being able to step away from it and examine it from a distance a little bit has helped. And it's also helped me then to, before I approach that person again, to have those walls built and know where they're going to strike and know that they can't. So forging a shield against hardships. So growing up in that difficult situation has allowed me to learn where the manipulation is going to hurt the most. And so, but heart hurts. It hurts feelings. It hurts my heart. But it's just such an emotional roller coaster. It was such an emotional roller coaster, and it is still. I'm thinking of one in particular person. It is still, but I've learned how to deal with this person, and I've learned that that this person is going to say and do whatever it is, because hurt people hurt people. But I have to protect myself, and I have to protect my daughter, and in a way I have to protect you, even though you do a pretty good job of defending yourself against this person. But what we have decided is that the choice to be present in this person's life is our choice. It's not when this person wants it.
And for how long we remain, like in any particular moment, is totally up to us. We're not tied there.
And our daughter's presence in their life is even less or even more protected. So I'm trying to protect her from the pain and suffering that I've been through with this person. I certainly don't want her to endure that from her well, as well.
and I think what manipulation in particular does is manipulation makes you into the worst version of yourself. Like when a person manipulates you, like think about what strings they're trying to pull on. They're trying to either cause you to react in a negative way towards them so they can play victim.
Yeah.
Or they're taking the best of you, your generosity, your kindness, and they're exploiting it, which naturally makes most people pull back and be less generous and less kind, because I mean, I'll be the first to admit that's a lot of what happened to me before you met me. I had been abused and manipulated so many times. I shut down. I threw walls up. I literally told the whole world, leave me alone. I don't want anything to do with y'all. And the people who knew me the best, my friends, not only knew like just this sea of train wrecks that I left behind me, but they also knew that like at heart, I wasn't a bad person. I really just wanted people to just be honest with me. And like, if you're honest with me, we may not be best friends, but I can at minimum coexist with you. We can just be honest with each other. We can sit down, we can have some mutual respect, we can establish boundaries, we cannot cross them. We're good. We can coexist perfectly fine. We can be neighbors, we can be acquaintances, maybe even friends, maybe not best friends, but we can figure something out. But the minute dishonesty came into the picture, I was done. I'd lost complete and total patience for it.
Yeah.
But because of all of those failed relationships and being manipulated, I think I was probably more on guard with it for you. You know what I'm saying? Because like, well, think about like,
well, yeah, you're.
Well, not just that, but I mean, of all of the girls I dated, like through my teenage years and everything else, like there were only two that didn't cheat on me. You and one right before you. So, it becomes one of those things where like when a person's been cheated on that many times, they naturally begin to draw the conclusion, well, everybody's a cheater.
Yeah.
Or when they've been manipulated that many times, everybody's out to manipulate me. So that's why I say manipulation makes you into the worst version of yourself. It takes your kindness, your generosity, it takes everything good about you and turns it against you. And then it takes the worst personality traits that you don't exhibit very often and brings them out. And I find that's why I find manipulation in particular to be like one of those horrible red flags. Now, how to identify it is tricky. Like you have to be able to take a step back and look at the situation objectively and almost dispassionately. You have to, I would say, one surefire way to detect manipulation is if a person doesn't seem to be adhering to principles. So like if they say one thing and they do another, that's a major red flag. Or if they say one thing one day and then the next day they take the exact opposite point of view, that's another major red flag. Like those are things that all lead me to believe like you're not telling me the truth. You're telling me in the moment what gets the reaction out of me you want it. Because the very next moment you could say the total opposite and mean it genuinely, or at least appear to. And maybe dishonesty is the other one, the other side to manipulation, because that's what dishonesty is meant to do, is to manipulate. It's meant to, it is the, if a person can lie and cry on demand, that person's a sociopath as far as I'm concerned.
I think you also have to, so we're talking about red flags, and everyone, including you and I, have exhibited these red flags, haven't we? Manipulation, and you've never manipulated someone?
I mean, not consciously that I can think of.
Never in your 40 years? Maybe I was just taught how to manipulate better.
I wasn't ever taught how to manipulate.
Have you lied to someone?
Oh, yeah. I've lied straight through my teeth.
Okay. You've never cheated in a relationship?
No.
Okay.
But understand that when I say I have lied through my teeth, it is because, I don't know, I have this weird sliding scale of morality where it's like if I watched something yesterday, a pastor explained this perfectly. He said that in instances where you have competing mandates, he was talking about biblically, like, is it like we are taught in Christianity, it's not okay to lie, but if you were lying to protect someone else, is lying still a sin? And the pastor's point of view was, if in an instance where you have competing mandates, the highest mandate holds sway. So if protecting life is one of the highest mandates Christians have, so if you are protecting life, then lying, which is a lower mandate, is off the table. You can lie to protect a person's life. Like he was using specifically the example of like hiding Jews during the Holocaust. And that was where the question kind of stemmed from. And the pastor's point of view was like, if you're trying to protect like 20 people from being shoved into a gas chamber, lying to the Nazis is perfectly acceptable, from a Christian perspective. And I think I kind of hold that. It's like if the reason for me lying is because I'm trying to accomplish something that like I believe is more important than this interaction, I'll lie. Won't even think twice about it. Feel perfectly at peace with it.
So what I'm getting at is then where do the red flags pop up? So if you're okay with lying to do those sorts of things, or if I'm okay with manipulating a situation to get a result, at what point did those red flags become major red flags? I guess if I was constantly doing something like that, I don't manipulate situations with you. Don't think that. But there are, boy, I'm telling you.
I think I see where you're going with this. I would say it comes down to intent. Like,
and how often?
No, not even how often. Really, just intent. Because, like, I would say that if you like, okay, let's distill these words down. Manipulate at its base form literally means to like to impart an outside force upon something to elicit an action.
Okay.
We manipulate our daughter daily. We prod her to take on personality traits that we want. We demand that she turn off YouTube and go take her bath to get her in bed at a reasonable time. And we do, every time we do that, we're doing it because we're trying to instill the personality traits and the behaviors in her that we believe will set her up for success. It's being done because as parents, we have a responsibility to put her on the path she needs to be on. And we love her. The first time, though, that we manipulate her out of our own ego, out of our own selfishness, out of maliciousness to harm her, the first time that happens, that is now a major red flag.
Yeah. So I'm glad you broke that down, because I do think of when I get into certain situations, I do think of how to handle that situation. And so I work with all females except for one poor man who
I want to take him out for a beer and a cigar. I feel for him.
But when you work with a bunch of women, you get interesting personalities, and you do get some red flags that are shown. And I am not the type of person. I don't want to be in the drama. I don't want to be in the gossip. I don't want to be in the clique or anything like that. Shut my door, leave me alone, let me do whatever. But every now and then, because of where I work and who I work with, it finds me. And so, not manipulating the situation and not lying either, I choose to answer questions. When someone is prodding for more information about this person, I may know the information that they're looking for, but first off, it's not my story to tell. And second off, I don't want to be involved. So the answer that they get is not going to give them the information that they're looking for, because those reasons. And whether that's a form of manipulation or not, so be it. But I've made the decision many years ago that it was healthier for me to not be involved in that sort of thing. And what they're doing is also a form of manipulation. It's just this round robin of manipulation. And I think that comes when you work with a bunch of women. I think that's just inherent. You're just going to get that kind of thing. Feelings are always going to be involved, no matter what. And I have to think about that. But I don't intentionally manipulate a situation to hurt anyone. I'm intentionally manipulating a situation to keep me out of it.
And that is an incredible analogy. I was also thinking to myself, like, there are times when I know for a fact you intentionally manipulate your students for their own good.
Okay, tell me.
Do you or do you not, in the course of your lesson plans, conceal the answer from them?
Oh, well, yes.
Well, why wouldn't you just be honest with them and tell them, here's the answer?
Because they have to explore the answers, and they have to together come to a conclusion on what is right and not even what is right, but what they feel is right. Because the subject that I teach is not definite. There are many ways to get to the goal. And so and a lot of times in different group situations where we're working through problems, and teach STEM. So engineers aren't going to just follow one way. They're going to look at different ways. And I can't remember who said it, but I think it was Einstein that said it. I didn't fail 100 times and succeed once. I succeeded each time in finding a way that didn't work. I can't remember who said that, but
I don't think that was Einstein. It might have been.
Either way,
I have to think about it.
But that's how I feel with my students when I give them an objective. Like this is the end result. This is what we have to do. You have to build a bridge or whatever. And trust me, we're doing more than just building bridges with toothpicks and marshmallows. But for the sake of the show, you have to build a bridge. It crosses the water, blah, blah, blah. I give them the supplies and I give them the goal that they have to achieve. And I don't interfere with anything else because that is the learning process for these kids. And they have to work through what didn't work and what worked. And so, yes, I'm manipulating the situation to where I'm not telling them how to do this. I'm not telling them how the engineers of cities have designed bridges to work effectively so that people don't die when they cross them. I am letting them figure this out.
And there have not been times like as parents in our daughter's life where we've watched her start to go down a path that we knew was going to, I say, screw her up. Like
friendships.
And there have been times when you and I have sat down and said, you know what, this is going to really hurt when she hits the end of this. But it's something like we have kind of like given her an out. She didn't take it. We're going to have to let her figure this out the hard way.
Mm-hmm. Now, that's hard as a parent.
Oh, yeah, it is. But again, there are times that like that's why I believe that the intent, your goal is much more important than the action in many cases, and in judging whether something's a red flag or not. To borrow from like the Matter of Facts podcast, the self-defense world, like we talk very often about personal self-defense and resolving violent conflicts. And the thing that's always very important to point out in those situations is like the goal is not to hurt the other person, whether you're talking about hands-on with weapons or anything else. The goal is not to hurt the other person. I don't want to do that. The goal is to make the person stop trying to hurt me. So anything up to that goal has to be acceptable, and anything past that goal is not acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
It's at that point, the action becomes less important than what was your intent. And that's why a lot of times we talked about conflict resolution on this show. We talk about a lot in the Matter of Facts podcast. Like talk about conflict de-escalation.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not about just, I'm going to apply more force until you back off. It's how do I get this conflict to stop? And sometimes the answer is, I need to be the bigger person and disengage and walk away, take the air out of the balloon, let this thing blow over. That's how to make the conflict stop. So whatever makes the conflict end is the way to do it. So that's why I would say, like in the analogy of like lying to the Nazis, in my opinion, if I lie to somebody to protect somebody else's life, I don't feel bad about that. And I would say the majority of people would say, I mean, Phil did the right thing. He didn't lie because he was trying to be malicious. He lied because he was trying to protect somebody else. Mm-hmm. And at a certain point, you have to consider and try to see what the end goal was. I think, like, from my perspective, a lot of times when I refer to red flags from my past, the problem is that the goal was to extract something from me. It was to extract my time, my energy, my attention, my money. It was always about, what can I take from this person? And that's why the manipulation, the lying, the selfishness, that's why all those things to me still stand out as major red flags. Because every time I encounter one of those red flags, that person was trying to take things from me. And not in an honest way, like, I would like some of your time, but in a sneaky way, mm-hmm. so that they could take more later with me not realizing they take it. So I would always say that when you're trying to judge whether a behavior is a red flag, like some red flags are just red flags on the face of them. Dishonesty, if a person is dishonest to you, they've kind of harmed a relationship. So you have to consider the fact that when I say, like, I would theoretically lie to protect somebody else, if I'm willing to lie to somebody, it's because that's not a relationship I intend to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
I would never lie to you to try to protect somebody else, because I can take you into my confidence and say, honey, this is the situation.
Yeah.
And you're going to back me up on that. So yeah, maybe that's the other side of things, is there's a side to this that is, there's some red flags you really shouldn't ever see from people you intend to maintain a relationship with, like dishonesty. And then there's some other things that maybe are red flags situationally.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe that's the way to put it.
Yeah.
But I would say that how you, like, to me, what we have to cover before we wrap this up is, what do you do when you encounter those red flags? Because,
well, old me would have just put the blinders up. I don't see anything. What? He's cheating on me? No, not him. Yeah.
my personal favorite is when a relationship starts because one of the two parties cheated on their other partner, and then that those two people get together after one cheated on another, and then they're surprised when there's more cheating happening, because I'm like, hold on a second.
That was totally me. That was me in high school. What do you do now? So me, young me would have put the blinders up and dealt with it, because I was very much a people pleaser, and I still to an extent am a people pleaser. And so I try to take the non-confrontational approach whenever I can. But now me, well, first off, I gauge a situation and a person first off, like firsthand. Like, I am going to gauge you. And you know who's a really good gauge is Piper. And if Piper, I don't know if she has like a sixth sense or something, but ever since she was little, if you put her around someone and she automatically feels uncomfortable, I know that I can't trust that person.
There's something up.
Yes, and it some of it has been like eerily weird, like sixth sense kind of thing with her. So I won't bring her around people I don't feel comfortable with. But if we're ever in a situation like that, I will read the tea leaves and see what my daughter's feeling. And then we will make a decision on whether or not that person's a part of our life. But now I don't have a problem not texting you back, or not answering your phone call, or not going to hang out at the barbecue with you, or I don't have a problem walking in the same building as you because we have to be there together and not talking to you. I don't have to talk to you. I definitely don't have to pretend to be your friend. I'll be nice and I'll be cordial and respectful, but I don't want to give you any false hope that I'm going to be your friend. You know, I've seen the red flag. I have one person in mind right now. I've seen the red flags. I watch what this person puts on Facebook. I see how troubled their children are, and it is not something that I want to be a part of. And I will say hello to you. How are you doing? How is your day? And that might be the only thing I say to you, because I'm not going to pretend to keep you in my life or be a friend to you, because we're just not. And so red flags now are easier for me to call out and call out to that person, or just totally disregard and not allow that person into our lives.
And me having always been a bit of a loner, I guess. I mean, I have my friend group, but like entry into that friend group is very limited, I guess is the way to put it.
Yeah, I think within the last 10 years, learning who we put around our child, whether it's a stranger or family, is it's harder to pass that application process for us. So you really have to show me that your intentions with her and with my family are good.
And I know one way that my dealing with red flags has changed. Whereas there was a time when any red flag was like immediate kiss of death goodbye, I now have developed like a 2-tiered system for people that I allow into my life.
I think that's what I was kind of asking. But go ahead.
Yeah. But like, you can be at tier 1 or tier 0 if like there's a reason I have to have you in my life.
Here's
like
a comment.
Always trust kids' spidey senses. Like dogs, my son can sniff out BS real good. For some reason,
I hope that Piper and your son continue to do that, Joe. Like, I hope that they always have that intuition in them, because it's going to serve them well in the future.
For some reason, we're so much better at that as kids than we are as adults. But anyway, but like I said, you could be a tier 0 if I have to have you in my life for some reason. Like if you are an occasional acquaintance, or if you're a friend of my wife's or my daughter's, don't take that personally. If you're out there in listener land, like I like most of y'all well enough, but like if there's a reason you have to be in my life, but like you and I just don't connect on that really close level where like I have ultimate trust in you, then you could be a tier 0, or tier 1. To get to that next tier, you have to be a person who, like, I feel like our goals are well enough aligned that I can let you in past superficial barbecue Phil to get to know who I really am.
To crawfish bowl Phil.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
Well, but like you have to no, because like, and you know this about me, like on the surface, I come across as a very talkative, kind of gruff person at times, but like past that surface, I'm a much quieter person. I'm an introvert. I am, sounds weird for a person who's been podcasting for 7 years, but I'm really introverted. Like I am at my best on the back porch with a cigar and a coffee, just having a quiet conversation with close friends. I don't do the big wild parties. It's not me. It's not what I'm comfortable in. And it's, you will, in a big enough gathering, you will never see the real me come out, because that real me is hiding in the back room. Proverbially and literally sometimes.
Yeah, your guard is up.
Yeah. And the more talkative I am, the more that guard is up.
Well, and with you can almost physically see that wall when you're in situations like that.
Yeah. But like I said, I that's how I've learned to handle it. Is I know that there are people that I have to have in my life for some reason, but I'm just not comfortable letting them all the way in. And maybe we'll get there one day. Maybe we won't. We may never get to that point where I let you all the way in, and you might think you're all the way in, but you probably aren't all the way in yet. Because the people who are all the way in, they know, they've seen. When you see me in
don't talk about Fight Club.
We don't talk about Fight Club. But that's how I've learned to handle it. And I wouldn't say that there's a right or a wrong way to address red flags in relationships. I would say that the only wrong way is the wrong way that causes you harm. Like if you allow another person to take advantage of or abuse you or manipulate you, then that allowance is harmful in and of itself, because it takes from you and it makes you into a worse version of yourself. And if your way, much like mine was when I was younger, was just eject people immediately, that's a little harsh, and that's harder to do as an adult, because you have interpersonal relationships you kind of have to maintain sometimes with toxic people. But then that's where like your way of put up the boundary and say, I can deal with you for 5 minutes at a time, or I'm not in the place mentally to deal with you today, so I'm just going to ignore your phone calls. Like that maybe become the best way to deal with it. But I would say that regardless of what the red flag is, regardless of how you deal with it, it is a thing that you as a young person, as an adult, are going to have to learn to deal with. And it's something you're going to have to, if you're a parent, you're going to have to teach your kids how to deal with it, because they're out there. There's nothing we can do about that. The only thing we can do is try to instill good personality traits in our children and express those ourselves. And then on the inverse side, recognize those personality traits and those behaviors that are harmful to us that we reject.
Yeah. It's a good place to land.
It is. It's also 11:14, and I need that coffee cup to get filled back up. You probably need a book and a blanket and a recliner.
And more coffee.
And more coffee.
Thank you guys for listening today and being a part of this show. We really appreciate it. I did want to say, because there was something that I asked Phil about last week about our Patreon account and supporting the Raising Values podcast. It is linked to the Same Matter of Facts podcast. So that information is there. If you want to become a Patreon or a patron of the Raising Values podcast, I think all of the same, what's the right word I'm looking for? I can't think of the word. All of the same good stuff that comes from being a patron of Matter of Facts comes with being a part of the Raising Values family. So mainly because a lot of us are all the same people. So, but there is a link now on our Instagram, and I think there's one on Facebook, so you can follow that.
And if it's not in the show notes for the audio podcast, I will add that shortly. And likewise, if it's not down in the description for the YouTube video, I'll add that. It's just something we need to kind of start populating. But
and if you like what you're listening to, we certainly appreciate you following and sharing the content and spreading the word that we're trying to raise values and talk about our life instances and the things that we've been through, and hope that it helps others. So if you feel like this podcast is something that would help a friend of yours or a family member, please share it. And of course, always reach out to us if you need anything. So thanks for watching today, guys. And thank you for listening if this is Tuesday. All right. We'll see y'all later. Bye.
Bye, y'all.